Today, my colleagues and I are together introducing SCA 21 and ACA 24. What these measures will do is to rein in the arrogance of UC. For too long, with the rarefied air that they breathe and the high rent districts that they live in, they've been totally out of touch with the people of California. Time and time again, they have demonstrated that they don't understand transparency, they don't understand accountability, they don't understand anything about what the struggles of the people of California are going through. There have not been public oversight of that institution for too long. The UC is one of 5 institutions in this country that has the kind of independence where the state legislature, the people of this state, the people of this great state have no control whatsoever. By far, among all of those 5 institutions, it is only UC that has the depth and breadth of that particular independence. And so what this legislation will do is to provide some voice, some people's voice in the operation of UC. Now, you will hear UC saying that, well, this is a takeover of the institution. This is the legislature running UC. They have always characterized any effort on the part of the state legislature as an attempt to control them. And that's absolutely not true. What we are saying is that no longer, UC, will you be outside the boundary of the state government of California. No longer will you be outside the boundaries of the people of California. And just as the CSU, we can, in fact, pass legislation that then moves the CSU towards greater transparency, greater accountability. And that's all we are doing with UC. And so this is not a takeover. This is not about the state legislature running UC, but rather just simply providing some oversight and transparency. And let me just give you a couple of examples. When UC started to negotiate their executive compensations with a number of their administrators or candidates and so on, they did that in secrecy. It caused us to take up a bill to bring some sunlight into what was going on, some sunshine into that particular operation. But that bill only urged UC to do that because we can't force them to do that because of the independence that UC has. When UC turned his back on his worker, on shared governance, on the pension plan, these are dollars that are paid by the workers. UC again said, no, we're not going to do that. And the only thing we could do in the state legislature was to simply put out a resolution urging them to do that. And this, mind you, is the only public pension in the state of California where employees are not part of the decision-making process. When we were looking at protecting students' First Amendment rights, again, we passed legislation. Again, it was only to urge UC to simply respect the rights of our students. And interestingly, even though it was an urging, it was a measure to urge, UC opposed it. UC lobbied against it. And so you can imagine what the stance of UC is on an ongoing basis. And that is that we don't want any accountability, we don't want any oversight whatsoever. Then more recently, we had executives coming into the UC system. They were being paid $400,000, $300,000. They were being paid more than the President of the United States, more than the governor of this great state. And so when you have these kinds of salaries, and when you have these kinds of decisions that are made, one wonders where these UC officials in the regions, where they get their information, where they get their understanding. And so we have a number of bills, and we have a number of resolutions where time and time again, UC feels that they should in fact operate outside of the purview of this state legislature, the purview of the people of California. Enough is enough, and finally we are saying we're not going to stand for it anymore. With that, let me invite some of my colleagues to come up and speak. Gloria Romero, who's chair of the Education Committee for the Senate, and she's been a strong advocate for open government, for transparency, and she will say a couple words.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Yee, and let me compliment you and thank you for your leadership on this issue. I'm very proud to join as a co-author, as chair of Senate Education, and as a graduate of the University of California. Not only myself, but my daughter, a recent graduate as well. This is a bipartisan effort. This is an effort on behalf of the people of the state of California. And let me actually thank President Yudof, who actually invited us and said everything in the discussion of this budget crisis. In his own words, he said, the choices are stark and everything is on the table. Well, President Yudof, Senate Constitutional Amendment 21, with the bipartisan support, is on the table. It is in the House. And I would remind you that the University of California is a public institution. More than 200,000 college students with dreams of their own. And then you add to it the parents, many of them first-generation parents. Let's think about the University of California and why now. The University of California was established via legislation in 1868. 1868, horse and buggy. It has been almost 200 years, and the laws governing the University of California have not changed. We have grown from that one mothership campus we've blossomed into several UC campuses throughout the state of California, 5 medical centers, and yet, since 1868, the laws governing the University of California have not changed. All I can do in trying to lead a fiscal accountability of the University of California is simply to request that the University of California do the right thing. It's as though there is nobility. We must bow down and request appointed regents, perhaps well-intentioned, but you take a look at the contributions that have been made to the governor of the state of California. All we can do is request that these regents do the right thing. We cannot enact legislation. We cannot enact change. We can hold hearings, and time after time we hear, oh, that was an exception to the rule. Oh, that will be corrected. Oh, we will do better next time. And yet, the scandals continue. You've heard about the perks. You've heard about the contracts. You've heard about the salaries. There's even the bottles of wine. They do have a spending limit on that, $75. But yet we have no opportunity as those voted by the people of the state of California to have a voice in the governance of this university system. All we can do, once again, is request that the university do the right thing. We've come a long way since 1868, and it is time to bring accountability into the governance structure of the University of California, similar to what we do with the California State University system. What this amendment does is not unlike what we already do with another prestigious university system in California. So I'm very proud to add on as a co-author. I look forward to moving this to the voters of the state of California so that we can finally emerge out of the horse and buggy era into the modern times of accountability and sunshine in governance. And if it's good enough for the state of California, it should be good enough for the University of California as well.
Thank you, Senator. Let me also acknowledge that Roy Ashburn, Senator Roy Ashburn, who has helped us on this particular issue, is unable to be here. He has to attend his grandson's graduation from preschool, so kind of interesting. With that, let me ask a member from the other house, Assemblymember Brian Nastada, who is also a champion of what we're trying to do, which is to bring accountability to the UC. With that, Brian?
Thank you. Actually, the one call I get will probably come in right when I'm speaking. Well, thank you for being here. I'm introducing ACA 24 for the purpose of bringing accountability and transparency to the UC system. There have been numerous examples, some cited by Senator Yee, where the UC regents and chancellors have not used the best practices for the UC system. Specifically, I focused on the issue of golden handshakes, where people have been given large, very generous retirement bonuses packages, and yet they turn around and come right back to work again, sometimes at a higher salary than they had previously left. President Udolph recognized this and issued new guidelines in an attempt to alleviate this problem. However, guidelines were previously in place but were not followed. Also, I've looked into the execution of construction projects. UC is engaged in a practice where contractors and subcontractors are not paid in a timely fashion for change orders. Quite often they're end up being paid pennies on the dollars, or basically told to go to court, where small subcontractors do not have in-house counsel, do not have the ability to hire law firms to compete with the UC. So we're asking them once again to change their practices and recognize they are not above the law, they are not above best practices for public institutions. So once again, I believe UC has had problems for many years in these different areas. They've known about them, but they've chosen not to correct them or remedy the situation that we know is what we'd like to see. So once again, I've introduced ACA 24 to bring accountability and transparency to the system, because without that, that's where bad things happen. When it does not see the light of day, and we've seen this in our own institution, when budget deals are done and when things are done behind closed doors without public input, without transparency, bad things happen. So I appreciate the fact that Senator Yee, Senator Romero, and my fellow Assemblymember Portantino we all working together with Senator Ashburn as well to bring transparency and real change to the UC system. Thank you very much. Oops, excuse me, Senator.
Another warrior in this particular fight is a former colleague of mine, Assemblymember Anthony Portantino.
Good morning. I would like to begin by thanking Senator Yee, Senator Romero, and Senator Ashburn, and my good friend Assemblymember Nastandi for bringing this constitutional amendment to the forefront. It is a pleasure to be working with each of them in a bipartisan manner to change our education system. I would also like to thank the students and labor groups beside us today. The personal experiences you all have with the university highlight the need for the passage of this constitutional amendment. The measure we are hoping to support here today and hope we'll get through will provide greater accountability and oversight to the UC regents by holding them accountable to the public. The premise of ACA 24 and SCA 21 is very simple. A state institution funded by taxpayers and charged with producing the scholars, business owners, and workforce that will lead California in the future and lead California out of this economic downturn must be open about the way it does business. In these trying fiscal times, we must be certain to spend money wisely, effectively, and for the purposes it's intended. The task is nearly impossible under the current structure when there is no accountability, and as been said, we can only make suggestions. ACA 24 and SCA 21 will provide the legislature the ability to provide the oversight needed to ensure the people's resources are being used wisely and our students are receiving the best education. On a personal note, my oldest daughter will be attending UC Santa Barbara this fall, and it excites me and it pains me that we, up to this point, have been trying many good faith efforts to bring accountability, to bring good government practices to the great institution, University of California. You don't amend the Constitution lightly. You don't amend the Constitution lightly. But the legislators who are standing up here have tried through their legislative careers to bring oversight, to bring accountability, and time after time, they haven't been embraced, and in most cases, they've been opposed. They've been opposed. So that's why we stand here today saying, you had an opportunity, University of California, to self-police, to change your practices, and as Senator Romero talked about, practices that have been in place since the 1800s. You've had an opportunity to embrace oversight, to embrace transparency, to embrace good government practices, and you've not done that. So that's why we stand here today saying the Constitution must be amended to ensure that the public's resources are spent wisely, effectively, and that the people entrusted to govern have a role to play in bringing that accountability to an institution that has chosen not to do so on their own. Thank you very much for letting me be a part of this.
Let me ask Talia Maff, who's with the Associated Students of UC Davis. A lot of our work is because of individuals like Talia. She's our future. She's our future leader and stayed in this world. And what kind of lesson and what kind of message are we sending to her as she moves along in her academic career and professional career? That there are certain institutions that are above it, that there are certain institutions that don't have to operate in sunlight, that there are institutions in the state of California that can, in fact, operate in secrecy. And I hope that those are not messages that she's going to take away as she moves along in her academic career and her professional career. With that, Halia.
Good morning. Affordability, accessibility, and accountability are the pillars upon which the University of California stands. Senator Yee's actions today mark a sincere, necessary, and appreciated step towards guarding the integrity of these commitments. It seems too easy for the UC Regents, who have already laid claim to their college degrees, to make decisions without consequences, to think of the desires of administrators and not the needs of students. When students are faced with the reality of the situation, we cannot help but feel discouraged and frustrated. We find ourselves asking, who is the university truly here to help? And why, when we ask questions of our governing body, are they not answered? I recently attended a Regents meeting to express my concern for students across the UC campus, and I found out why our questions are not answered. They are not even heard. Only half of the Regents could even find the time to show up to the abbreviated public comment period, and of those, they seem more interested in finishing their lunch and chattering with their neighbors than hearing the concerns of students. But someone has listened, and that person is Senator Yee. When students express frustration in the UC Regents, Senator Yee goes to bat to insist on increased accountability. Just as he has stood behind us, we now stand behind him in his efforts to bring responsibility to the Regent body. Thank you.
Next, we will have representatives of workers, Rodney Orr with the University Professional and Technical Employees. Rodney.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. And many, many thanks to these fine legislators who are bringing us forward today. I'm with the University Professional and Technical Employees, Communications Workers of America, and we represent the researchers, healthcare professionals, and technicians at the University of California. We do the hands-on research work, the teaching, and the patient assistance at the University of California. So why is this legislation needed? I say, and UPTI says, that we cannot trust the regents and the Office of the President to always make the correct decisions. And let's look at a little bit of history. 19 years ago, the university stopped all contributions to the employees' pension plan. For over 19 years, there was no money going into that plan. Now they're coming to the state, and they're coming to the employees, and they're claiming an emergency. But for 19 years, nothing was done. 18 months ago, through questionable, probably unacceptable accounting mechanisms, there was a transfer of over $400 million from the pension plan of the university to a new pension plan set up at the Livermore Lab when it was privatized. $400 million. About 14 months ago, we and many people from labor offered the university the opportunity to take a look at a plan that would save millions upon millions of dollars in healthcare insurance costs for employees, the employer, and the state of California. They did not even want to look at the numbers. And then we've heard about all the scandals with executives. First of all, there was hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars wasted to remodel a home for the regent of the University of California in Santa Barbara so that he could live in Hope Branch instead of an acceptable, more than acceptable, chancellor's home on the campus. And then there's the $60,000 pet run in Santa Cruz. There's the retired and then rehired police chief at Berkeley for more money than they left with. There's the Davis Vice something or other, who for over a year was in a position collecting about $200,000 a year without any job assignments. There's President Udolph, who was recently hired, I believe about 18 months ago, at over twice the past president's salary, over $900,000 a year. The president of this country makes about $200,000 a year. There's the new chancellor at UC Davis, $400,000 a year, free housing, $100,000 moving expense from Illinois, and a $9,000 car expense. And then there's health and safety for the students, for the workers, and for the public. We have thousands of research labs at the University of California doing some unbelievable work, some of it quite dangerous. Every one of those labs polices themselves, is responsible only to themselves for compliance. The Office of the President will not take the responsibility to make sure that those labs adhere to health and safety rules and regulations, until, of course, there's a death or a massive injury, like there has been twice this year. So once again, I ask you, is this legislation necessary? I believe that we can all agree that it definitely is. Thank you.
Next is Willie Pelote, who represents ASME here in California.
Thank you, Senator. Well, I think the end of this press conference will say one thing, is that the legislature has taken the first step forward to hold one of its own bodies accountable to the people in the state of California. And I want to applaud both a bipartisan support. This is one where you don't see one party over the other. This is bipartisan support coming forward to say that we have the University of California that's out of step with the way that the people in California expect for a government agency to perform, and that they're going to do what is required and that is necessary to bring them back into compliance by opening up the process, providing the transparency that is needed, and making sure that the University of California operates the same way as any of our other prestigious institutions that educate the people in the state of California, and that no one is above all of the compliance that is required for them as they operate when they receive taxpayer dollars. If you're going to receive taxpayer dollars, you have the responsibility to be very open and responsible and responsive to the people and how you carry out your duties on a daily basis. The brother before me who just walked you through a list of things that is truly egregious when you take a look at the behavior of those who we expect to perform in a different manner. And the legislature is clearly saying, that is enough, we've heard enough, we have seen enough, and you're going to comply. And like Assemblyman Portantino said, making changes to the state constitutions is not something that we take lightly, but it said this time is the right time to do it from the legislative body and ask the people to join what the legislature is going to put in place and before them to make sure that the University of the State of California operates in a manner that we all agree that fits the institution, but also requires them to make sure that they are complying with what the people wishes should be as well. So I say to the legislature, thank you for your involvement. Don't give up, move forward. They are a formidable opponent, but it's time for them to understand clearly that they're going to be just like everyone else, respectful, do things in a way that is accountable, and not think that. You know, for many years, as I've done this job, we were told that they had to pay professors, and we agreed with that. But now we are seeing that they are deciding to take care of administrators and at the same time denying those who make that institution what it is today. Use less funds, being able to do less for their families, finding themselves being laid off, finding themselves without being able to have to work 2 or 3 jobs. It is time for the university to come into compliance. Transparency and openness is the way of government. The way of government is the way of our society. And we should expect no less from those who run our institution at the University of California. I asked you to go out and visit some of the campuses or the UC Regents meetings. The last time I can remember that you had a person on there that was in touch with everyday human beings was when Dolores Huerta was appointed by Gray Davis. It says something clearly when you appoint people who have more money than the Lord himself and make decisions every day in a secret way. They do not feel obligated to do things in the public. You hear the young lady who said, clearly when it was time for the public to have come before the regents, people felt it was important, the regents felt it was more important to speak to their neighbors than listen attentively to the people when it was time for them to have a say. It's time for that to change, and I'm looking forward to the challenge, because nothing is worth it if it's not a challenge. Frederick Douglass, read it. We up to that charge. Thank you very much.
Next is Julian Posadas, who is with ASME 3299.
Good morning. My name is Julian Posadas. I'm Executive Vice President for ASME Local 3299. I'm also a food service worker at UC Santa Cruz. We represent other service workers and patient care workers throughout the 10 UC campuses and 5 medical centers. We applaud Senator Yee for introducing this legislation that will make UC more accountable to California taxpayers. Studies have shown that when executives are allowed to control funds without accountability, the primary thing they do is vote themselves big raises. This has clearly been happening at UC far too long. Senator Yee and other legislators have not been able to put an end to UC's excessive executive pay, secret meetings, and misplaced spending priorities because UC's constitutional language shields the university from having to answer to everybody. This bill is needed because UC workers do not have a voice in their pension plans. Unlike California State University and community college workers, instead the UC Regents govern their pension alone. Research shows that pensions that are jointly governed by employees and managed by are healthier and more secure in the long term. For several years, California lawmakers have asked UC to create a board governed by a partnership of UC management and its active and retired employees. Both houses of the legislation passed a resolution last year urging UC to give its workers a voice. What did UC executives do? Absolutely nothing. UC workers need a voice governing their own pension, and this bill is the only way to get it. And on a personal note, speaking with members at UC Santa Barbara before heading to Sacramento today, they wanted me to send a message that ya basta, enough is enough. It's time for UC to actually be held accountable, not only to workers and its students, but to taxpayers of California. Thank you.
Let me ask Valerie O'Rourke with California Nurses Association.
Good morning. I'm Valerie O'Rourke, and I'm a registered nurse. I work at UC Davis on the neonatal intensive care unit, where we take care of the sickest infants. Some of them weigh maybe just a little more than a pound. I've been a nurse for more than 30 years, and today I'm here to represent the California Nurses Association and to say that we are proud to support ACA 24. We agree with Senator Yee and that enough is enough. Across the state, at the various campuses of the UC system, the registered nurses have had to struggle with the UC on various issues, from financial transparency to adequate staffing, disciplining pro-union RNs, and union closures. We have to even fight to get lunch and breaks. By enacting ACA 24, the legislature would have the much needed oversight of the public institution. I love my job working at the NICU at UC. We provide some of the most innovative care and serve many needy residents in our community. But with the service that we provide, we want our employer to have the proper oversight of a public institution. During these economic times, we don't want our capacity to care for the financially challenged to be limited by the fact that the UC executives are still receiving pay raises and bonuses. Additionally, being able to advocate for our patients is an essential part of our job. Having the UC retaliate against coworkers who speak out against the UC is totally unacceptable. We believe the ACA 24 will help UC begin to function as a public institution again. I would just like to close in saying that at this moment, my husband's in the intensive care unit, but I felt it important enough to come here to speak out. Thank you.
Then let me have Jeff Freitas with the University Council of American Federation of Teachers.
Good morning, and thank you, members, for introducing this legislation. The University Council of American Federation of Teachers supports amending the California Constitution to rein in the regents of the University of California. UC-AFT, representing lecturers and librarians across the University of California, has long been concerned about the regents' lack of accountability to the stakeholders of the UCs, its students, faculty, employees, and the citizens of California. Here's of utmost concern is the current danger to undergraduate education. Currently, the UC is struggling with severe cuts to education portion of its enterprise, but the regents have responded by hiring new campus chancellors with enormous and ever-growing compensation packages while cutting core academic programs and library funding. Even though the education of California's bright young people is the university's principal task, education funding seems to be the first place the regents decided to economize. I'm a former graduate of the UC system, and in the 2 years since I was a transfer, the 2 years I was there, my fees doubled from $500 to $1,000. It was a while ago. What other public institution do you know of that the public or public elected officials do not vote or have a say in the increase of the fees or the taxing of students? Here's another example of the regent's totalitarian control of its employees. In the 1990s, the regents decided to outsource the management of the University of California retirement plan to private investors. Since that time, the plan's return have severely underperformed. The regents have ignored the employees' concerns and refused to allow employee representation in their own retirement plan's governance. We are not calling upon or questioning their academic excellence. We are recalling their governance and asking for better accountability. As employees, educators, and citizens, the UC-AFT members want the University of California held accountable to its stakeholders, the students, the employees, and the citizens of California. Thank you.
All right, that concludes our speakers.